Good evening, welcome to PressPass. My name is Masai. This is what we have lined up for you. Hard to believe this is a picture at Ndakaini Dam at a time of heavy rainfall and flooding. Tonight, we try fill in the gaps. A damning report on the Kenya Forestry Service is released and its role in a mismanagement of forests in Kenya. Let's see how much information we can get from one of the task force members tonight. Let me introduce you to my guests. I'm very pleased to have with me first time on the show and I believe even on the station, Dorothy Nyingi. She is a coordinator for KenWeb, which is under the National Museums of Kenya. She is an aquatic environmentalist, or an aquatic, what's the right title? Ecologist. Environmentalist is next to her. And that's how few they are. We actually not used to saying their names. Aquatic ecologist, and you'll see why we have her on the panel. She has done a lot of research. She just tells me she's driven from Nanyuki all the way for this program because that's where she's based. She has been doing a lot of research on the river Iwasonyiro and its state, and even in Tana River. And you know the state right now, they're all flooding. She'll have a lot to tell us about this in the reportage over the same. Next to her is the environmentalist, the man in Nguyen, Dr. Isaac Kalua. He is actually a fan of the show. Thank you so much for making it to be a panel today and for making time for us. Today, they released a task force report on the issue of the forestry and the role that has been played by the KFS, the Kenya Forest Service, in the management of our resource here in Kenya. He'll be able to tell us a bit more about that. And next to him is a colleague in the profession, and that is Sam Munia. He is the head of film at the Africa Uncensored Investigative Team, headed by, of course, John Allen Namu, no stranger to us. Thank you so much. He's been following up on the issues of environment here in Kenya for years now, and I'm pleased to have him. Next to him was meant to be Mbaruku Vyakweli, but he wrote, and he is the head of corporate communications at the Nairobi Water Company, and he said at 10 p.m. he writes, knowing that the program starts at 10 p.m. he said he's sorry he's not able to honor the invite. In-house issues, he says, and that is why he's not present. And very unfortunate that we could not have him to represent the thoughts of Nairobi Water Company, the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company, based on one of the main focus areas tonight. And this is that. This past week, the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company insisted that it has not diverted any water from Ndakaini Dam or any other sources used to meet the water demands of residents of Nairobi. The company says that all the regions that supply water to the dam, such as the Aberdare ranges, have not had sufficient rains, and that only at the end of next month will this situation have improved. This is a story that was filed by our very own Andrew Cheng.
The 14 falls in Thika no longer lives to that title. Excess waters flowing through it means that all the 14 different falls which earn it the name are covered in the brown raging waters that are roaring through. Operators here say the excess waters have driven away tourists and can't wait for the levels to come down. The current rainy season has brought with it such odd phenomena rarely experienced before. The vital Ndakaini Dam is only at 30% of its capacity. Again, the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company insists that the low levels are no one's fault, but the erratic rains and climate change.
For the last 1 month or so, it has been raining in Kenya. We have seen a lot of rain, particularly in the savanna areas. In the Aberdare ranges, the rains have been very poor. The highest amount of rain we have received in any particular day has been 48 millimeters per day, particularly in Sasumua, where the rivers start.
The Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company has denied allegations that it has been letting water spill away and claiming that the dam is below capacity.
As I said, that's the valve for desilting the dam.
It claims that the only outlets for water are two, a spillway which comes into play when the dam overflows and a valve to desilt the dam.
You can see the level of the dam is quite low. So even we have not reached where we can say the dam is spilling. So it will not make any sense to score the dam at this particular time, because we need any drop of water to be stored. Then we can use it when the river flows and goes down.
The company says that the rain being experienced in many other parts of the country, which has resulted in contrasting experiences of death and destruction on one hand and spectacular abundance on the other, has not been felt here. However, not all hope is lost, because the company says the rains in the Aberdare ranges, which will now fill the dam, could still yet come next month.
The rains are, what I can say, they are in the plains, the Savannah plains. They are not in the highlands as it is at the moment. I know others have been talking about Tana River. Tana River gets water from two areas. It gets water from Aberdare ranges and Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya, it's raining, but Aberdare ranges are not raining as efficient compared to the way it is raining in the other part of the country.
These are the scenes elsewhere, and even in the Tana River, 4 of the 7 Fox dams have already reached their capacity. The Masinga Dam is rising daily at an abnormal rate, and if the rains persist, it could spill over by the end of May. Yet in Ndakaini, it's all despair and hopes that with the coming month, things will change. Meanwhile, in Garissa, several homes have been flooded and farms submerged after Tana River burst its banks. The residents claim the flooding is being caused by the spillovers from the dams upstream.
Sasa ile tunahitaji maji hatubati, wanafunga, wanafaidika. Hawa watu wa stima wanafaidika. Hatubati. Sasa ile mvua inanyesha, maji wakijazwa wanatuachiliwa tena, wanatangaza, toa watu wako, toa watu wenu, tumewacha maji.
Families living along River Tana have been forced to seek shelter elsewhere, and more warnings have been sent to those living along the riverbanks to move to higher grounds. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Just again to set the record straight, we did invite the representatives of the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company, and they said at 10 p.m. that they will not be able to make it. So the chance was given. So, and let me set the record here. I mean, the tone in what many have been saying about the media in coverage of this issue of Ndakaini, because many are asking, why does Nairobi, or at least some parts of Nairobi, have water scarcity at a time we're seeing many parts of the country flooding? And Sadiq Shaban, a senior in the profession, he wrote, "Dear Kenyan media, Ndakaini Dam is the new Eurobond, a liquid Goldenberg scandal, a fluid NYS haste. Descend on it, feast on it, probe it, find the sources of the dam and trace them to the end, from the ground to the air. Drain the lies, drown the cartels." I'll start with Dorothy. As you've seen that report, and many have been over the week, even in the printing press, about the Ndakaini Dam levels at this time of flooding. Does this story hold water to you as it's been given?
Well, ideally, there shouldn't be a difference between Ndakaini and other dams, because there is records of water in the rivers that feed into Ndakaini. There's been rains in the Aberdares for sure. We see signs from other rivers fed by the Aberdares, such as the Tana River. If you look at the Delta, it's risen higher than it has since 2006. So the Delta itself is really far from the source, the Aberdares itself. And this is the Tana River, the largest river. So why is Ndakaini not filling up? The question is, when others are, what should we be asking ourselves? Is it foul play, or is the problem in the catchment? I think we need to search for the source of this problem.
You mentioned something about the catchment, and that's been one of the reasons given. Dr. Kalua, as you've followed this, I'm sure you're very keen on this, what has been your overall notion about this particular story?
When such a thing happens, I have always wanted to get to the root of it in the best way, and it becomes a learning process for me, Mark, as we deal with this. And some of the questions that I was asking, and because there are experts in this country who are supposed to deal with these issues, including the meteorological department and experts in this field. And they say very clearly, in such a situation, you need to know how much water is coming in. You look at the aerial rainfall, computing the runoff vis-a-vis how much water is all this. It's an issue of balance. And you find that Ndakaini, out of a scientific process, the inlet is the same as the outlet.
Okay.
This is one issue. The second issue, the last time I checked, is that the region which is the catchment area for Ndakaini is called Tuthu. And I looked at the rainfall measurements that out of the Tuthu station from the team from meteorological department, and you find that there has been a level of about 1,100 millimeters, and clearly, cumulatively in the region, even though rain is visually available and abundant, there are those disparities. You find that there are some regions that are raining much more than others. And therefore, these are things that we need to look at and then understand what is the issue. And hydrologists have looked at this. Look at the water that is coming also into Ndakaini. It's clean water. It's not the muddy water.
Yes.
And therefore, it also tells you something. Before we even start getting into the issues of destroying of the catchment areas and the anthropologic issues, which is just an issue of human interference and matters of climate change, we need to look at these issues very deeply and consult with the issue, because the information that we pass to the public is so important.
Yes.
When we just say it is corruption, it is all this, we need
Cartels.
to first of cartels. I suggest Kenyans, these are the things that have really taken us aback.
Okay.
And we just need to start looking at issues from the root and then be able now to proceed to the right direction.
Yes.
So that it gives us a good
yes.
initial
But the
direction.
question will always be asked, you know, are there cartels who are diverting the water in Ndakaini that is meant to be coming to the taps of Nairobi residents?
Kenya, that is possible.
Yes.
It is possible.
It is possible,
Yeah,
you
it
say.
is possible.
And I'll ask Sam Munia, you were behind the camera, I believe, when you followed the team of the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company, quite well choreographed, taking us around. For you, is that where the story ends, or is there something more that you would want to pursue?
Well, thanks a lot, Mark. I would describe the issue of Ndakaini in a bigger picture, that is not just about Ndakaini.
Yes.
When you can't talk about Ndakaini without mentioning the whole ecosystem, Aberdare ecosystem. If you look at, there is a lake called Lake Olbolosat on the northern side. Right now it's been shrinking. That's one factor. What are the reasons? Human activities and also the natural issues of climate change and stuff.
Yes.
I will describe the situation in 3 levels. The first level is inside the park, where we have the Aberdare National Park. We've got people burning the moorland. That's the first step. Then we go to the next phase. That is about the forest, the illegal or legal logging. There's also the issue of water abstraction in the forest area.
Yes.
After that, now we have the 3rd level of the counties that border the Aberdare ecosystem.
Okay.
The Nyeri, Muranga, Nyandarua. There is a lot of water use for irrigation. Now then there is the 4th phase of the others. Amongst them, the counties outside that area that are dependent on these Aberdares.
Yes.
So all these factors have contributed to the lower levels. But the description on what Dorothy was asking about whether there is mischief that's happening.
Yes.
Having interviewed several people and following this story from different scientists, the description that it's been raining in the Aberdares. But the biggest challenge is when you visit Aberdares, yes, it's raining. But when you come downstream to other places, we can't see the water flow.
Yes.
Yes, it takes time for the aquifer to recharge. And having had three consecutive years of below average rainfall, you'll find that this time around we have more than the usual, more than 70% of what we've been having. So that's why the 3 rivers that bring water to the Aberdares come from the eastern side, of which in the Aberdares, it's the western side has more rainfall than the eastern side. So these three rivers, from the ecosystem, they cover 75 square kilometers. So it's a very small area. And according to Nairobi Water, they were supposed to increase that surface,
okay,
so that we can get more water, which was supposed to be done in 2001.
That is some background and,
Yes.
and good background that you give to this particular story.
Yes.
But still, a Kenyan will want to know, and this is in their layman terms, they will tell you something like this. Sir Vicky Omwando says, this insinuation that there is no rain in the Aberdares, beatable fallacies peddled by cartels who milled a lot of cash through selling of the vital commodity. This is corruption sanitized so that the cartels keep thriving. If you don't pursue this line or this particular persuasion, then you're told you're either in conspiring to hide the truth. So how do we go about this story then as media? I'll start with Dorothy and then Ndakaini.
I mean, there is proof from data, from scientific data, that can tell us if there's recharge of the rivers or not. As we've heard, we already have data from Meteorological Department that can tell us whether the rains have been adequate or not. And keep in mind, this has not been the first stretch of drought that the Ndakaini Dam has encountered since 1988. Recharge from Aberdares to the aquifer, which should feed the rivers, is a gradual process. So even if there was a lot of rainfall at the moment, what we're having is a flash flood in most of the cases. If there is no forests to regulate this flow, then the recharge is not possible.
Okay.
What you're having is just surface flow, and the water will not get into the rivers as we expect. However, if the water is getting to the rivers, then we have proof. If we have the Water Resource Authority release data on what are the levels of the rivers, then we'll be able to know if water is getting to Ndakaini or not.
Okay. So some of the areas that we can pursue. But Dr. Kalua, and you hear this a lot, unatupea kizungu mingi. Watu wanaiba maji ama wana divert maji ama hawaibi? Tuambieni.
You know, Mark, you started with a disclaimer as we started the program.
Yes.
You said someone was supposed to be here, and because of internal issues, he couldn't make it.
Right.
That is what must be dealt with first. In fact, the person who needs to be speaking about this issue is Nairobi Water Services Company.
Yes.
Kenyans are seeing an increase of water bowsers in the city in their tens of thousands. Water is being disconnected in other places. The county governor of the city of Nairobi has talked about this issue. Those are the issues that must be dealt with now, not tomorrow.
Okay.
The other issues about where water is coming from, we need to actually have a scientific process. The scientific process is very clear. You must have weather stations that are in these specific areas where the water is coming from. You understand what is needed at that place, and then now start dealing with the other issues there where Mwananchi comes in.
Yes.
Because the Mwananchi will never understand the need of water if you are conserving and you are not gaining out of it.
Yes.
They are not getting the payment for ecosystem services that they are supposed to get out of protection upwards. And this is the same thing that happens, and Daktari will bear me witness in this. In our Sonyiro, when we had a very big problem and there was destruction in the upstream and downstream, and people not being involved in the resource distribution of what is easily available and where they are placed. So these are the things, and it is a shame that the Nairobi Water Services Company is not coming out in the way that they should.
Yes.
The people who are in the office today, they've been there only for a short time. It means it is a problem that has been there for a long time. It's only been culminating to a bad situation that everybody can see.
Yes.
If this is the situation.
Right.
But I've said that the issues need to be guided. We need to look at the report that has been given by the weatherman and understand precisely without being judgmental about the entire
And someone
process.
says here, and as I throw it, we only have 2 minutes for this first break, to take the first break. Jim Justice Nyamo says there is need to look at the river flows, hydrology, in brackets you say, that feeds Ndakaini Dam before we speculate anything. As the investigative team, is that something you're pursuing in telling this story?
Well, We have some leads, and I won't disclose it right now.
We won't steal your leads.
But
yeah.
the problem we have in this country is impunity. You will find that most of these areas that I highlighted before, we have so many bodies that are regulating water. And everybody, there's so much corruption.
The ones with the water bowsers, as Daktari mentions.
Exactly. These are cartels who sell water in this town. Where do they get that water from? Where do they get that water from? If you go to even the other side of Mount Kenya, it's still the same thing is happening. So many pipes are all over. If you go to like 2 major rivers that drains to River Tana, we have 70 intakes on top of that Mount Kenya. Wow. When the river goes out of the forest, it's very low. It's impunity.
Yes. Is this a concern for you, you know, as a coordinator with Kenya Wetlands?
Yes.
Something you follow?
What happens here is that the Water Resource Authority provides permits for people to build these intakes. Now, these intakes belong to water projects, most under the Water Resource Users Associations at the ground level. Now, the system that we use of permitting water is not effective, an effective measure of what water is being used. Most people in that level are not using meters. In Nairobi and other cities, you have a meter, measures how much water you use, and you pay for it. These other systems, it's about permits. It's a system we inherited from the water laws after, when we were colonized from the 1903 onwards. That permits is what allowed us to use water. Now, this is a system that needs to change because water resource users associations will never comply to the rules. There is no way for the Water Resource Authority to enforce the rules.
Okay. So that's a problem in the structure as well.
Again, good things being done so many times until you forget which one was better than the good one. You remember some time back in 2005, Mark, you must have read in the newspapers, a situation or something that was started by the Nairobi Water Services Company. This is why I say it's not the individuals, it's not the institution, it could be individuals not following up issues, unaccounted for bills. You remember something that was started that was called Bills Bila Bala. I think by that time it was either Mheshimiwa Kabando who was the chair or something like that.
Yes.
And talking of illegal settlements, talking about the bypassing of the meters and all these things. I think we need to come down from the end of where the water comes from, how much is charged, where do the levies get to, the monies that get into a specific fund, does it get to the user, does this get to the producer of the water? The producer of the water is that guy who sits up the stream, protects the forest, plants trees, and that water percolates into the soil and then is released through the rivers in a very comfortable way, natural way. And then now the issues of thinking about dam, thinking about how we are going to put heavy infrastructure, irrespective of what other laws and guidelines talk about protection of water towers.
Yes.
These are the things that must be dealt with and followed with all the oomph that is required to ensure that we settle it. Water is life.
Yes.
And it can never be anything less than that.
And we see what's happening down south at Cape Town and what have you. And this is some thought for us as we take a break. Joy Kiregia says there are many theories of what could be happening at Ndakaini, including satellite pics showing private dams. Fact is, the scientific explanations make sense to some extent, but it's not enough. We need more answers because something doesn't add up. Let's see if we'll get more answers, especially now from a report that was released by a task force Dr. Kalua sat in, and this is on the use of our resources. And yes, there's a lot to talk about there. Hopefully he'll give us some information from this confidential report. Welcome back to PressPass. Appreciate the comments that you're sending in as you follow the conversation. Royal Paul says, if 14 Falls, which is also referred to as Chania Falls, is full, yet it gets its water from the Abaderes, how comes Ndakaini is at 30%. It beats logic, Paul says, and this is something that you can also add to or, comment on. That's to my panel. Moehe says, the bigger question is, why are Nairobians silent? Why accept the corruption and the systems that impede on what is theirs? Now that we know cartels have been at it, what will Nairobians do? Or are they going to be bystanders and watch a few run amok? Now, to the other issue, and feel free to respond to this in terms of giving any comments that you wanted to as we wrap up on that issue of Ndakaini, but there's a lot to talk about it. But I want us to also focus on the report that was released today. The Task Force on Forests, Resources and Logging Activities has presented a list of those suspected to be involved in the mismanagement of forests and the illegal logging in the country to the Cabinet Secretary of Environment, Keriako Tobiko, earlier today. Tobiko, while the list remains confidential, Tobiko says he will present it to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission for further investigations and prosecution. This, as well, is a report by Andrew Ocheng.
It has been 7 weeks of painstaking work travelling all over the country and taking stock of the country's forest cover. As it handed over its report today, the Task Force on Forest Resources also handed over a brown envelope. Inside was a list of Kenyans who have allegedly been illegally benefiting from Kenya's forest resources. The task force has defended the list and says they have evidence to back all the claims.
There is no politics here. And we stand as task force members with every recommendation and every finding that we speak of.
This document, together with any evidentiary material, will be forwarded to the Anti-Corruption, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission for them to do what they are best suited to do.
We mean what we are saying. We are ready to testify anywhere.
While the names on the list remain a secret, it is believed that most of them are employees of the Kenya Forest Service. Already 16 employees from the service have been suspended pending investigations on allegations of corruption. The report on the task force gives a strong indictment on KFS, accusing it of gross mismanagement of the forests, lack of enforcement of laws governing forests, and directly issuing permission to sawmillers to cut trees in the forests.
The Kenya Forest Service has institutionalized corruption, and the system is replete with deep-rooted corruptive practices, lack of accountability, and unethical behavior.
Among the recommendations by the task force is that there should be a new board of management at the service. The task force also wants a caretaker management team to manage KFS and vet all the officers. The task force has also recommended a total ban on logging and the use of cedar trees and wants the creation of buffer zones that are 500 meters wide. The task force is also recommending that plantations that are located inside conservation zones should be reverted back to natural forests and that private landowners should be given incentives to plant trees. Earlier, the task force had briefed the Deputy President William Ruto on its findings. Ruto says the recommendations will be implemented to the letter and has directed the Environment Cabinet Secretary to form an implementation matrix within the next 10 days. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
Sam Munia, as a journalist, what will be your first point of action in terms of pursuing the information from this report? What are you looking for at first?
Well, first I think it's a good move. I don't know whether we will succeed on that. Hopefully we should. But it's sad that 80% of the country is arid or semi-arid, and we are not thinking about that. We are also only concentrating on these places and giving pressure as the population increase.
Okay.
The future of the country, I would say this is a disaster in waiting. Okay. Because like what happened today, in Muranga, these people are protesting. They don't want to supply water to Nairobi. Nairobi County want to increase to phase 2, so that we can be able to cater for the demand of this increased population.
Okay.
30% of people in Muranga are the only people who have water. We have 70%. There's another project of the tunnels that is supposed to be constructed in Murang'a. What does that mean? The same time, look at Nyandarua. 60% of people in Nyandarua have water. What about the 40%?
Okay.
40%, we still get water from Nyandarua County through Chania River, Sasumwa Dam. I think if we don't care for the future generation, there will be conflict because of natural resources.
Yes.
Sad to say.
And we hope we don't get to that. But this is what I was getting at when I was asking you that question, especially on this report that was released today. And I'll throw it to Dr. Kalua, because as I'm sure now you're going to enjoy the findings and the money from the task force, because you've been paid to do this job. As you enjoy this, the questions will come. Give us the names.
Thank you, first of all, for being the Kenyan that we are supposed to be and how much we have been paid. But on a very serious note, Mark, yes. This is the very first ever task force that I can imagine that worked from beginning to the end without a single penny.
Even allowances?
Allowances are expected. It takes a procedure for that to happen. It has not come, and that has not stopped the members of the task force to do what they were supposed to do. Okay. You tell me that that's the beginning. And I must allow me to congratulate our very able chair, Madam Kamau, because of the tremendous leadership. There was no less a person in that entire team. They gave their best. The passion was unmatched.
Yes.
Any time you meet Mark, any of the members of that task force, please greet them and give them a hats off. Okay. They did their best.
I'll give you another hats off.
Record time.
I'll give you another hats off if you give me the names.
Yes.
Now, those responsible.
We'll come to that because this is public information anyway, okay. And it will get there at the right time. Let's get even to the most and more important issues about the importance of all these processes. We are talking of a forest cover of the country at 7.4, the closed canopy of about 2%. That is the mountain forest within there. And these are the catchments of our water that we have. We are talking of a country that is losing 62 million cubic meters annually, leading to a loss of about 19 million US dollars. We are talking of an area that affects 5,000 people directly and another 300,000 people indirectly. We are talking of an area and an ecosystem in this region that pumps 7 billion Kenya shillings into our economy. Now, if all our water comes from there, we are just talking about Ndakaini from here, it tells you how important we must treat the issues of forestry and water towers per se in the real seriousness that we must deal with. And I am glad during the entire task force life, by the way, there was no weekend, there was most of the time we were working throughout, Kenyans came in a manner that you cannot believe it, Mark.
Right.
We had those aerial views, we had to study documents, we had to invite people to make presentations to the task force, we had to go for aerial views and site visits, and this came out. And we also had that specific time where Kenyans would say, I fear for my life, I fear for my job, I fear for my children, and I need to give you information in closed door, purely voluntary. Okay. When you read that report, Mark, it will not just be report like any other. It will be a report that is well researched. And you heard my very able chair say that we are ready to stand and witness, give witness to everything that is there. Okay. So it's the first ever, and I want to appreciate the commitment to all this.
You've given yourself a lot of kudos. But
the names,
yes.
Yes, and I really feel nice about it, for sure.
Okay.
And the names, you see, these are issues and processes that are going to come in. Okay. There is a reason, and a very obvious reason, why an envelope will be given, closed, and presented. Allow me to say, it is not KFS that is bad. There are, and we found very many good employees, very committed to service and ensuring. You'll be surprised how many people will be implicated in this directly. And this is where it is direct. It's not speculation. It is one plus 1 equals to 2, where you have actually seen the processes. So it's not everybody in KFS. There are very good officers, excellent, A1, but equally, according to the report, not me, there are people who are corrupt to levels that are mind-boggling.
Right, and contribution to where we are right now. I'll ask Dorothy, from your background as a representative of the National Museums, at least the coordinator of Kenya Wetlands, what is your interest point to get information from this report? What are you looking for?
Well, for us, would like to know, actually, from this report, whether we'll be able to see enforcement of the regulations that will lead us back to restoring our ecosystems.
Yes.
Because the link between forest and water is no longer a mystery. We all know that forests play a very important role. And Kenya has committed itself to many agreements, included the United Nations Forest Forum, where they should be committed or have committed to sustainable forest management. And we know that KFS will be the arm where this will take place. Now, I would like to know whether the enforcement will help us to continue to bridge the science policy gap. Because the more information we put out there as scientists, if put in a document, will not go further. The hand of the law always seems to be very short when it comes to natural resources.
Yes, and knowing the situation as is in terms of managing our resources, even without getting information from the report that was released today, what do you want changed? You know what's happening. You've interacted with the stakeholders. What do you want changed?
Well, we want a recognition that there's a need for an integrated plan, forests and the water sector, to work very, very closely together. We already know on the ground that the water resource groups, user groups, and the community forest associations are the same people. They utilize natural resources at the same time. And therefore, that recognition that these are the people who can help us manage the activities they carry out on the ground will help us to move further. We should not look at incentives for them to manage their ecosystems. I think they're capable of doing it. What we need is disincentives for people to over-abstract, to pollute our waters, to create furrows, to use too many pumps, and all these pipes that we're hearing about in the upper catchments.
Yes.
We need disincentives to ensure that this stops, not incentives for them to take conservation seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the team of the Africa Uncensored, as a journalist yourself, what will you be keen to get from this report? And that was my initial question to you.
Well, if the report is very available to us, we have to dig deep till the people who have committed crime are brought to book.
So would your first reference be knowing who is responsible? At least who's been named as responsible?
Exactly. We have to protect the future of this country.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think it's wrong that we will have a keen interest in getting those names as media? Because that's one of the things that we really want to get out. You can tell us the volume of the report, how extensive it is, but you will see that the interest will be there on those responsible. Do you think that's a wrong approach, Dr.
I think it is the wrong approach, and I will. I'm speaking this from my heart. I like what you guys do as media. I once in a while do write in the newspapers, putting my mind down. But I think what we need to treat Kenyans to is how profound, where did the rain start beating us? Why has it taken this long, as opposed to just the individuals?
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. Today, honestly, and I'm being very sincere, I was actually very disappointed. When the report was being given out, my very able chair, my team, gave everything that seemed to be the issues about the forest. But the moment the letter, the envelope appeared, everything else did not matter. Everybody wanted to know what is in the envelope. Envelope is just individuals who may have done something wrong. And the minister said that this will go to the to the
ESCC.
to the ESCC, and it's a process that is straightforward. The only reason why I would not mention it, even if the cows get back home, is because there is a process which we cannot prejudice and start messing up this, otherwise it will be used against us. But what is more important that I would have really appreciated seeing my media friends dealing with today is, can you imagine in the entire process, there is no one who asked to be given the report. This is a fact.
Give it to us.
You're talking about the briefing today.
It is available, of
today.
course, the briefing today. Yes. Okay, nobody during the question time who asked, can I get a copy of the report? It later happened because everybody was using a different way of trying to get the individuals, the names in the envelope and all that.
Yes.
And it is not their mistake. It is not the mistake of the media. It's the way Kenyans we think.
Okay.
It's the way we think. And this is the issue that I am just kindly asking ourselves. Starting with you, Mark, because you're doing a good thing of having us here.
Yes.
And we need to speak about things openly. And we can only help each other to support each other. The real issue is not the envelope. The envelope is sorted out the moment it was locked and closed. It is just a straightforward issue. It will be taken to this. But what is my responsibility? How many of us know that the president is launching a tree planting exercise that is unmatched in this country? 25 million trees to be planted in one record day on a Saturday, coming Saturday. How important is this tree that we are planting?
Okay.
How much water does, all these things, so that the role of the Kenyan that is down there is well understood in a way that they know what they are supposed to do.
Yes.
And I will finish up with this one on this segment.
But we're not done yet, yes.
Yes.
You finish your point and then Dorothy
on
will
this
speak,
point, yes. The issue, one of the issues that was found out in this process is the issue on penalties. Okay. And this is a challenge that I'm throwing to our very honorable members of parliament, because they actually represent us. I elected one, he or she represents me, and just like everybody else. There is that responsibility that we must act beyond what we have our selfish gains. The 2005 Act, Forest Act, the penalties were changed from 2005, logging activities, illegal logging. The activities or the fine was, say, 1 million shillings for illegal logging. I think it's 1 million or 5 million, something like that. But then, no, 100,000. Then it goes to a jail term of 5 years. If that is in the 2005 Act. The 2016 Act, you would expect it to enhance this process so that if you are caught with illegal materials out of logging, you would be getting a heavier fine. But little surprise, the 2016 one talks of, if you're caught with illegal stuff, it is 1 million Kenya shillings, no, 100,000 Kenya shillings, sorry for this confusion, 100,000 or 6 months jail. The same on charcoal. Previously it was 100,000 or 1 year jail. And then the 2016 it turned to 100, not more than 50,000 or 6 months jail. The Constitution talks about 6 months being a term or penalty being a small, a petty offense, and therefore you cannot even be put in remand.
So we need to push for that
now.
issue.
The thing is, the tragedy is, if you're caught with illegal materials today, you caught and you're taken in, you can pay only 100,000 shillings or less, even if the materials were worth millions of shillings. Who changed this? Kenya Forest Service recommended, the ministry recommended that it be done well, but it went to parliament, it was cut.
Okay.
How do you explain that? Our leaders are the ones who are supposed to be helping this kind of situations, but it looks like this is the space that inaokoa wananchi.
Perhaps they benefit in
kurudisha pesa ya siasa. You see, that's the kind of a thing that we need to start. No, we shouldn't dwell about the names.
But this comes out in the report.
Yes, it comes out in the report.
I want to give a chance before we take the second break, and there's the issues they bring out, and you as an ecologist, you have your own interests. But for the public, as a media reports on this task force report, what would you want to go out? You've mentioned a few issues, but what would you want to go out for the public?
I would like to follow up on Dr. Kalua's tree planting discussion. And I think tree planting is a good thing.
Yes.
But if the milestone is number of trees, then we are losing a lot, because we know that tree planting has failed in many places because there's very low survival of these trees.
Okay.
Planting trees has to be at the right time, the right season, and then you have to factor in how are we going to ensure that these trees survive. If we're going to plant trees in a form of afforestation process where we're planting them in formerly degraded forests, then in that case the question bears is that who's taking care of these seedlings? We've noted that in some places tree planting has only been about 30% successful. Therefore, number of trees planted should not be our milestone. It should be number of trees that survive. We've also noted that trees planted within farms and within people's privately owned land is more successful. So that should be obviously upscaled. But we also need to think about afforestation in a different way, not just number of trees,
Yes.
but number of trees that we can maintain to survival.
Yes, and that's a point that I want us to pursue, and I'll give a chance to Daktari to respond, because it's something that's coming up in the next few days, this tree planting exercise. And you bring up a good challenge on what actually as media we should be challenging. We take a quick break here on Press Pass. We'll be on our last part after that. Welcome back to Press Pass, the last part, and just a question that Dorothy brought up on the issue of the tree planting exercise that will be on Saturday. 25 million trees, you said, Daktari? Yes, but she brings a challenge. It's not about the numbers. It's about being able to ensure that there will be survival of these trees, because the survival rate has not been very good in the past. What do you have to say about this?
Daktari, you can't have put it any better than this. I appreciate you. And that is why I talk about educating the mwananchi. When we are talking about these things, we need to let the common person aelewe ni nini tunaongea juu yake. First and foremost, that is why the story changed from tree planting to tree growing. So that you are ensuring, you know, even if you just you just fenced off a water tower, a forest, or your own specific place, you would have a lot of regeneration, especially with a lot of water like we have right now. And therefore, tree growing starts even not just by planting, but by protecting areas that are supposed to have growth and be able to understand. Tree planting, when we talk about 10%, it must relate to you. We are confusing Kenyans when we tell them about 7.4, 1.7, sijui 5.3, 7.1. We are telling them all this. Tell them what it means to them. And therefore, we go further. And this is something that was started by the same KFS and other institutions that are doing this. If you have 1 acre of land, plant only 64 trees. That means 640 is what would fill up the entire acre. 10% is only 64 trees. If you have a half an acre, plant 32 trees. If you have a quarter of an acre, plant 18 trees. If it is an eighth, plant 8 trees. Just make sure that they grow. The moment that gets into us from the individual level, it will run to the community, it will run to the nation, and therefore into other areas. If you leave the forest just to ensure that the Kenya Forest Service protects and does the 2%, by the way, all the forests in the country that are under the management of KFS is only 2%. Just little, in case we didn't know. They cannot be unable to protect these areas. There are many other activities and resources that they need to be facilitated on, and that which is sustainable. By the way, they collect 3 billion Kenya shillings out of the forest resources that are available, and this money currently gets into the recurrent on an annual basis because they have to pay their own. And this is why going forward we must create, and this was suggested by the DP himself out of his commitment. Little wonder he has planted more than 300,000 trees, himself the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. But this is not known. Many people are not able to understand some of these things. So to be able to put this money that is going to the recurrent in a way that it is sustainable, a levy that collects all the environmental issues, water, all this, to be put in one kitty, and then every institution draws for the purpose of posterity something that is sustainable, so that we are not running into a situation that, oh, today we don't have resources, we don't have money for this, we don't have, that is unsustainable. And therefore it depends on who is on power today, and that must stop. So again, ownership, I have always talked about, plant your age. Plant trees equivalent to your age and make sure that little forest started. And it started with Wangari Maathai. When I called for Kenyans to plant 71 trees for Wangari, people planted, and eventually it grew to something else, and it became plant your age. Today there are many concepts. Whichever concept it is, just grow trees. Make sure that they grow. Own the process. Make sure the Mwananchi understands tree is equals to water, and water equals to life, period.
Yes. Are we saying, though, that the Kenyan does not quite understand? Well, we know of one leader who said that, we know where water comes from, and he was really off. But are we really taking Kenyans, for granted, or, belittling them by saying that they don't quite understand the connection of trees and the rainfall?
Kenyans understand this. I mean, even traditionally, even if you look at our customs from the past, we protected our natural resources because we depended on them. This is our environment where we live. So when people come in and tell us we are now going to teach you how to take care of your environment, it is in a way undermining what people already know. But what is happening is that people have lost a sense of responsibility, their personal responsibility to the environment, to what the environment represents for them. As we continue getting more developed, industrialized, and urbanized, people are losing touch with what nature is. But everybody appreciates a beautiful place. Everybody wants to go to Karura Forest.
Does his explanation give you, some form of satisfaction that indeed this particular initiative on Saturday, there'll be a lot of fanfare, and I'm sure Sam will be there with the camera. We'll be there with the camera to follow through with this initiative. It will be a lot of fanfare. But I believe your fear is it shouldn't end at congratulating our president and our leaders in, starting this particular campaign, but question the follow through on this particular issue.
Exactly, and there are very many ways of following through. I would like to challenge the media to follow through with that story a year after. How big are the seedlings? Years and years after, we should be able to see that forest, or even on Google Map. So I think it's about following up and making sure that these grow, as Dr. Kalua is saying. That they become a forest. Anybody who's planted a tree knows that it's not about how many you plant. It's making them survive. And some die, so you replace it. So we would like to see this as a program and not just a project.
Right. And just to clarify, you said it's 25 million trees. Just help us understand, in one day, 25 million trees? Or
I think those details will come out. I'm only a second holder of information. There is a team that is working on that, very well coordinated multi-agency, and I'm sure there is a team from Kenya Tourist Board that is going to release report that is well coordinated. Not just one that I'm saying here. I'm giving it as an example of something that must be done by this nation. You see, Mark, as press, you went to the lady who talked about Serikali's idea at one time during floods. The lady has become a champion in other issues that nowadays it is not Serikali's idea. I want to challenge your team and the media team to go out there and look out for my brother, the mheshimiwa who said that mvua haitoki kwa miti, and bring him board. And he says that hiyo ilikuwa ni siasa wazee, tuendelee na tupande miti. That is how, because people who come from that specific constituency, they understand and they can see, and they pick from their leader, because a leader is a leader, and they must pick it from that. So the fact that you're already talking about him many years after, it means that there is an incomplete job. Look out for that man. and get him out to a camera.
Yeah.
And for him, just everybody knows, even he himself knows it was politics. Aseme tu ilikuwa ni siasa. That way we will start changing the perception of our people and get people to be serious on this process. And I agree, it's not about the number of people. Our country, and it comes even in the task force report, our country can create so many job opportunities out of the forestry products. We can grow trees. The bamboo has got so much opportunities.
Yes.
There is now going to be an opportunity of even importing timber as we deal with the issues that we are dealing with within the moratorium period, so that we can get everything done. There is so much that can be done. Even the big four is highly dependent on all this. You can imagine the number of jobs. You can imagine if the deputy president and his colleague, the president, they choose to have an army to plant trees, how much jobs will be created through the NYS and all these kind of things.
But not just any trees, but trees that will be followed through.
It's quite an industry that we need to look at it that way.
I want to put this to Sam, because him and his team have been doing a lot of work following up on the environment. And if you can take a shot of what I'm looking at here, my director, this is a page for Africa Uncensored, and they have been working on various stories. And if you just look at the list here, the latest, of course, why Ndakaini Dam is not yet full despite the ravaging rains. And then you have the end of the river series over some time. A time to water harvest, the data behind Kenya's impending water crisis. This is just one of them, and it actually gives you the figures that you could follow through and see what options that we have. And this is something that we'd want to talk about. But is it possible that we can make a culture out of what we're starting on Saturday? You see what's happening in Rwanda, Munia, and that is in the cleanup exercise, the countrywide cleanup exercise. Is it something that we can actually champion as media to have a culture to preserve our environment?
Well, it's possible if the leaders ensure that their followers do it. The problem in this country, we do things for cameras.
Yes.
I've covered very many events on tree planting exercises, especially in Mount Kenya and Abadea's ecosystem. But when you go there after 1 or 2 months, there's nothing. That's the challenge we have in this country. So we have to dig deep. As Team Africa Uncensored, with our theme, Investigate, Expose and Empower, the series we've just shown there on End of the River is about a Wasonyiro ecosystem. We followed this for the last. Two and a half years. Right. The people we interviewed, some of the people that we covered in Laikipia, Isiolo, all the way to Meriti Aquifer, most people have died because of conflict.
Over that resource.
Over that resource. Just that. It makes me sad most of the time when covering these kind of stories, but as Dr. Kalua puts it, I think it's time we change our attitude towards what we believe in as a country.
And you've inched into something that I want us to finalize, conclude with, and give us your thoughts. And he says this is work he's followed through for over 2.5 years. He's worked closely with you, Dorothy. And this is not quite the habit with mainstream. We'll see the pictures, and if my director will show the very shocking pictures of the flooding in different parts of the country, cars being washed away, and it's just impossible. Not what I'm looking at on my screen, Mr. Director. The cutaways of the flooding, that's ravaging different parts of the country. It's pictures that are really shocking, and we've seen it over the weeks. And unfortunately, these are the pictures. Unfortunately, these are quite good for the camera and good for TV. But what can we follow through even after this area goes dry? What are we able to follow through? You've given us an example of what you have done, End of the River, for 2.5 years. I'll start with you, Dorothy, your challenge to media in following through this particular story.
Well, the media has clearly been able to follow the flooding, because this has been a spectacular flooding. But we will soon have a drought, because we're going through these cycles in every system, even in the Wasonyiro. With climate change, we have more severe droughts and more and heavier flooding. So these cycles create conflict. Now, the conflicts that he talked about between upstream and downstream users will continue unless we plan long term. This is not 2030, it's not even 2063 with the Africa vision as we have. This is long term, looking at how do we finally resolve the water crisis, whether it's flooding, whether it's drought. It's by finding ways of making sure we have storage of water when there's flooding. That this storage of water can be clearly calculated, that it would be projected to be able to cover for the drought season. We have to think about all the catchment areas we have, even roof catchments. There's so many buildings in upper catchments and even in the cities that people have no gutters to collect water. A lot of this water goes to waste, and it's water that can be used. So we must look at how to resolve conflict, not just by dialogue between the conflicting communities, but also making sure that water, when it is available, is also stored and released as it would. We must restore our wetlands as well. Our wetlands are like sponges. During the flood and heavy rains such as this, they take up water and they release it slowly, recharging rivers as they should be, not in a flood flush as this, but in a slower process that makes that water usable.
Yes. Are there existing examples, and it sounds ignorant to ask, but are there existing examples that can be used in Kenya in terms of water harvesting? When you talk about it, it sounds grand. We need the national government, we need the county government. Are there examples for Kenyans at home, mashinani, wherever they are, urban centers, to actually take part in this?
Well, there are very many communities in some of these dry areas, even in the Iwasunjiro system, that have invested in harvesting water, even from grass-thatched houses, and using that water as their water source. So we have small-scale successes, but these can be upscaled, and people can also see their own responsibility in also providing their own water. That water is going to waste. And when I say waste, I'm not saying necessarily that, you know, it cannot be infiltrated into the ground and get to the aquifers, but you can reuse that water for agriculture and other things. We can also recycle our wastewater better. There are many countries, including Israel, where wastewater is recycled almost 5 times before it becomes sewage.
Yes.
Yeah. So we must look at ways of recycling water as well. Wastewater management is not just managing sewage and water from flushing through, but also seeing how it can be used for agriculture. Agriculture takes over 70% of water in irrigation. This is a really large amount of water. For it to come solely from our rivers is unsustainable.
Yes. And there's something else that's being thrown here at Daktari, and Moses Kipraisi says, kindly ask Daktari on the recommendation they gave on the catchment areas where human encroachment has taken place. Will the encroachers be evicted? A good example is the Nyandarua Subukia escarpment.
Very good question, and I want to take this opportunity, even just before I respond to this, to sincerely convey my condolences to people who have lost lives out of mudslides, out of floods. These are deaths that should not happen. It means that we have messed up somewhere, and this is for real. On the same note, I want to appreciate the media in a way that I cannot have enough words to say. Because over the time, you have been raising these issues, from floods to plenty on the other side, to drought and all this. And sometimes it looks like media is just filling up space for news and all this. I think you are exemplified from all this, that you have done your job, and the message needs to be home. The issue of encroachment, there are people who are living in places that they shouldn't. That life is actually unpalatable. You're living at over 3,000 meters above sea level. You're living at 4,000 meters above sea level. You have created a farm and planting maize in such areas. It just cannot work. again, we are out there going as a country, creating and having no uncoordinated way of doing things, so that the Ministry of Water, the actual thing that they must be seen to be doing is creation of dams, which is inside the forest, which is actually against the spatial plan of the country. The land in the so-called forests and water towers is not available for living, leave alone having a title deed. Even if you had it, is just a piece of paper. It was never available in the first place. So the idea is to get these people out, but it has to be consultative. It's not kicking people out. It is making them understand why they have to be elsewhere and ensure that they have what it takes to go and set themselves out somewhere, because they didn't bring themselves where they are. They were brought by others. And then number two, fence off those areas very well. Having a national plan that clearly demarcates areas for specific reasons. Ensuring that our water riverine is very clear and safe for use and not for planting, as it were. And all this is issues of communication. I am glad you're talking about water. Educating the mwananchi in the best way. You are a human being. You need 20 liters of water by the end of the day. Your goat needs 20 liters of water. Your cow needs 70 liters of water. So you calculate times the number of people, and then you can buy a tank that can keep you for the period. You calculate the number of time that you'll stay without any rainfall. Calculate the space of the roof that you have the collection point. Dig a dam and have some plastic paper. Your cows will have water from that end. You have sufficient water on all this. But the people do not have the capacity to buy this. This is where the corporate institutions come in. Corporate social investment. So that even banks, you are not just counting your profits out of the money that you have made. You are also calling at the social profit, where you are also supporting institutions to buy tanks, individuals to buy tanks. You tell a mwananchi who has got no income at all, and you tell them or encourage them to buy a water tank that is 50,000 liters, where are they going to get it from? And who else is going to come in there? It's not a serikali's idea thing. It is about responsibility. When we say we have made 7 billion, 10 billion, 5 billion as a bank, so what? What you need to have made also is also including the social profit that needs to count as profit to the bank, not just the money that we are bringing, the social capital of it. So these are things that we help to educate the mwananchi to understand. It's such a shame that after such rainfall, you have people running for water with donkeys 3 days after. This is the time that you sit down and listen to what Abbas Gulaid is talking about with Red Cross. If he's asking for funds that the government supports him, you do it. It is not about Abbas Gulaid. It is about the institution that is affecting lives positively and affecting people the way they should. And I think these are the things that we need to deal with as a nation, to add value, so that we are putting our money where our mouth is and not otherwise.
So, direct answer to Moses Kipraisi's question, there will be eviction, but you say in a consultative manner.
Just as per constitution.
This is what you've recommended within this particular report. Bwana Sam, they speak of issues that can be taken up by Kenyans, and the media, in whatever mode, whether it's through radio, whatever it's to the print or the television, reaches the people on the ground. In your experience, what can we do to continuously let them know and give them awareness about the importance of some of the new interventions that we can look into?
Well, it's interesting. It's also important that this narrative of conservation has been developed by the Ndakaini issue. The message that Daktari has about the task force and the recommendations after implementation, the campaign that they should embark on should go through the media that has good geographical coverage. But the problem with Kenyans is attitude. And also we as media should refuse to be used as puppets just to convey information for the sake of it. We should be able to follow and dig deep. Having said that,
yes.
I would say that most public institutions currently are being used, or they are auctioning the natural resources to the highest bidder. You'll find that what is happening, if you have money, just get the natural resource and move on. Regulations are not there. They don't exist. We must get our priority right. Then secondly, lastly, for how long should we rely on donor fund for us to do conservation?
Yes.
Why must we rely on donors to do conservation? Even the Ndakaini Dam that we are talking about was funded by the World Bank, 2 billion. Are we still waiting for more donors so that we can go for phase 2? Should we wait for donors to tell us what to do? That's the challenge we have.
Thank you for that. And as you give your last comment, I'll give it to Dorothy. Jacob Abere Matlala, you've given in very many comments. I'll pick this one. Kenya, we are good in policy making, but totally poor in implementation, and that is why others said trees don't attract rain, and today our crusaders and their pipers are in media defending them. Kalua, come than being a theorist. I don't quite understand what that means, but he says we're good in policy. I'll take the first part, but totally poor in implementation. What do you think, or what's your challenge for us to help transform the policy to implementation as media?
Well, this requires that we receive all the support we can in enforcement. As I said before, the Water Resource Authority, KFS, and other managers of our resources are only as empowered as their enforcement capacity is. One of the reasons that makes enforcement very difficult is because communities themselves protect each other. If the water resource users associations, for example, have knowledge that they should not be using portable pumps, creating furrows or illegal obstruction of any form, they should be compliant. They know they should be. And they should know, and they do know that they need to be able to report non-compliance, but they will not because of the way they were formed. Some of these groups were self-help groups. Others were formed just from neighborhoods that came together to form an association. Now these are people who go to worship places together, they are neighbors, they go to schools, and their children go to schools together. They're not going to report. Right. They help each other actually. When the enforcement officers are in the field looking for portable pumps, they call each other. Oh, they're in this part of the river right now, everybody takes their pumps out. So we have to find a way of water governance that ensures that enforcement and compliance are taken into account. We also have to ensure that service providers are known and authorized. We have to stop the cases where we have more than one service provider that is not known to the government, for example.
Yes, right.
Because that will remove all forms of non-compliance and also any forms of sabotage with pipes, for example, and this does occur, or with any other infrastructure that have been set for water provision.
Well, I think I'd have to end it at that because my director tells me we are out of time. But we'll be following up on the Saturday function that you spoke to, and this is definitely something that will get a lot of cameras following. But like other colleagues in this profession, such as Sam Munia, will follow through that it is successful and it is sustainable. So is there a particular place they're calling people to converge, and do you have the details to that?
I'm sure the presidency and the team will be giving advice on this issue, and therefore it is the responsibility of every Kenyan, because it's something this is just a launch and it is a process. It's not a one-day event just like that we ensure that during this period we ensure that we plant and grow trees in our area. So it is everybody's responsibility. This weekend, get on your gear and grow trees wherever you are. Regarding the report, we have 3 days that has been set. The minister, and I want to thank the minister specifically, and his PS for ensuring that these things happen. Within 3 days, as agreed, as guided by the Deputy President, there will be a caretaker committee at the Kenya Forest Service working together with the board that is going to be appointed. There will be no lagoon in this process, and there will be, within 10 days, the report is going to be presented to the President. There is an implementation matrix, so it is not just a talk shop, as it were, and therefore we are going to see quite a lot. And I sincerely call upon every Kenyan to support the minister, to support the current parliamentary group that is in charge of environment, to ensure that we have everything else that we need. We do have enough laws in this country. We just need now to move from plan to action and be realists.
Okay.
Not just as someone may have intimated there.
Yes, theorists.
That, we are being theorists.
And Sam Munia was not able to come for that press, but I'm sure you'll be able to furnish him with the details of the report and perhaps a brown envelope. I'm just joking. The report is something you'll definitely follow up. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for your time. And of course, you'll see more of her work, Dorothy Nyingi. She's not too active online, but she'll continue working behind the scenes as part of the National Museums as the coordinator for Kenya Wetlands. And you will see a lot of Dr. Kalua. You'll definitely see him in the front line with the tree planting exercise this coming Saturday, and it's something that we'll definitely cover, hoping that it doesn't change whenever it will be carried out. And yes, he also sits in the capacity, one of my producers at NTV tells me, as a chair of the Kenya Water Towers Agency, and was a task force member, the task force that released the report today. Thank you so much for your time. And Sam Munia will be following up. You can check out their work if you didn't perhaps follow through with what they have on their website, and that is africauncensored.net. And you'll see the work that they've done in terms of following through in the eco-watch, I'd call it. A lot of good work you're doing there with the ladies and gentlemen there, and a good challenge to us in the mainstream that we will keep doing that. Thank you for watching. Thank you to those behind the scenes here, behind the cameras that you don't get to see, for making this possible. Good night.